Thank you for letting me present to you today. There is nothing in the world that I'm more passionate about than talking sheep and plotting against the industry that exploits them. My name is Gary Hall and I'm the founder of Sheep Advocate Australia. I always like to start a talk with a little bit of history. I find it very relevant from where I'm standing today. Most of you would have no idea who this man is. We could call him a lot of things. He's probably the original destroyer of this country. His name is Captain John MacArthur, and he's credited for enslaving millions of merino sheep and starting the wool industry in Australia. In 1805, MacArthur was the first to be given land and the rights to farm and 30 slaves. He purchased the first merinos brought to Australia, who originally were essentially stolen from the Spanish royal family. And off he went to establish the first merino or sheep wool station in Australia, and labelled a hero for doing so. It all started here, in fact, a 22-minute drive from where we're sitting today, Elizabeth Farm, named after John MacArthur's wife. "70 Alice Street, Rosedale, Parramatta." It's hard to imagine that Australia's first farm sits right under that little lammy there. Makes you wonder how many of the people in that suburb up there know the history of that land, the death and suffering that was happened is staggering. The environmental devastation, Indigenous slaughter, we're literally all fanned 20 minutes away from where we are today. Historical facts place the sheep farmer as the first destroyer, a hostile takeover in the name of wool. The history is deep in colonial worship, and sheep are absolute victims of that. There is no other industry that receives such economic worship and historical admiration. It's said that 1 in 3 Australians have an affiliation with the sheep industry, either a distant family member, childhood experience on a farm, or have connected with sheep exploitation at some point in their lives. With sheep being such a key symbol of Australian worth and identity, I believe challenging this industry is essential for awakening the public's long deep sleep of looking away and ignoring the rights and welfare of animals. I could stand here and roll out a multitude of horrendous situations I've witnessed over the years, but we can't change any of them. I don't think you deserve to hear any of them. I wish I could forget some of them. However, we can change the list of cruel practices that sheep endure, evil behaviour that could be abolished. With every welfare improvement, there is a cut in the industry, a cost, a required effort. With significant change, we could see people stepping away from the industry. It's complex, it's a multifaceted cruelty machine, and I believe sheep endure some of the worst treatments imaginable. Now I feel guilty because the next lot of slides are going to outline many sheep practices, and most of them you have no idea about, and unfortunately I can't reload them without showing you, so some of you might find them graphic, but I have tried to subdue it. Tail docking and banding, cutting off limbs with no pain relief. Pain relief is available online for most operators now, and it's suggested in Victoria to use, but it's certainly not mandatory. Difference is banding, as most people would know the process, but this one is the one that I find particularly horrifying, which is a hot knife, where they just cut the tail off. So no more. Mulesing, you've all heard of it. The official description of that, it's hacking skin off the buttocks to create scar tissue where wool won't grow to try and prevent fly strike. And that wool is grown excessively on the buttocks because of crossbreeding and what we've done to the breed themselves. So mulesing is specific to Australian merino sheep. So the industry like to blur the lines a little bit, but some of these practices are specific to merino, and the merino population is around about 60% of Australia's overall flock. Crossbred, sorry, I'm a bit slow on my footage. That's me, Lizzie. I filmed that one. These sheep have actually got their tailbones hanging out of their rear end. This person mulesed all those lambs and every one of them died.
Just to clarify, did you say that merinos make up 60% of the entire Australian sheep flock for meat and wool? Like
The overall national population. So we've got meat sheep, which are self-shedding breeds predominantly, or crossbreds.
So you said they died?
They did. Every one of those lambs died. So
from loss of blood or what?
From infection. Their tailbones are hanging out of there.
In spite of preventing fly strike, has caused another infection.
Yeah, he's literally hacked all their skin off to the point where their tissue and bones are exposed. So, and he got away with it. I've been documenting this particular farmer for over 6 years. So. Pam knows this sheep, crossbred to grow excessive amounts of wool, even though Alex was his name, was it?
No, I'm sure his name. He was one before Barack.
Yes, that's him.
Yeah, Barack.
Even though this seems extreme, we quite often lodge cruelty complaints with sheep almost to this point. I'm trying to say two in the bush at the moment that are nearly this bad. So they will keep growing wool to the point that they can't see anymore, and they'll literally just stay on the ground and won't be able to move. So we did that to sheep. So there are sheep are natural in the wild that don't need shearing. So this is all crossbreeding, all we've done.
So what would be the weight of that fleece that sheep is bearing?
Oh my God, it'd have to be 20 to 40 kilos, I imagine.
Which is not a lot for that size.
Yeah, it all depends on how it's soiled and wet it is.
Yeah, I think it was about 30 something kilos. It was one of the second highest ones in Australia. It's probably the record you don't want to have, but yeah. They're only about merinos 5 kilos of wool.
For a human, that'd be equivalent to having a size thing about it.
Yeah. It's almost carrying another sheep on their back. Forced to mate multiple times by breeding machines with no breaks in between. Unlike the dairy industry and cows, it's actually get given a break between for welfare, and they know it's for the best conditions of the animal. Sheep are used like breeding machines, and they get, as this girl has done, they get left in a paddock and their ram gets dropped in repeatedly, and they get no break between. And the gestation period for a sheep is six months, so the industry can almost squeeze two birthing periods out of almost a year, every day of the year. So, this girl's got the death mark on her back, so I filmed this girl. She was about 7 years old, so the ideal breeding age is about 4 to 5. She would have been left to drop dead in the paddock. She's just about to die. This image doesn't show her very clearly, but she's very anemic and skinny, and she's going to die, and she's struggling to feed that lamb. So she's got the cull mark on her back, so she'll be killed next time they round them up. She was from one of the largest sheep farms in Victoria too. Forced to birth multiple lambs when naturally one is normal. These girls are carrying triplets. I know from witnessing them being born that they all had their legs way too long. They were bred with the wrong ram. Most of the lambs struggled to get off the ground when they were born.
Can I just ask, what's the point of that when the survival rate of twins is so much lower?
It's a bit of a numbers game. So if they think, well, if we're doing triplets, we might win and get 3, but we're going to get 2. So if they do aim for 2, they might get 1. So it's cool. It's, as I'll get into why they're focusing on that so heavily now. This is an extreme case. These girls are, obviously you can see it's so unnatural what we're doing to them. So they have selectively bred these girls now for triplets. It's getting more and more popular, and they're bred rams to be able to shoot high potency rams too that encourage multiple pregnancies as well. So it's a combination of the ram being designed very well, almost a raging monster that, and the girls being selectively bred. So, the selectively bred is the random one that births twins or triplets, stays alive, and the ones that bear singles die. Forced to endure various heat extremes with no shade and shelter. We're all aware of that. There's thousands and thousands of animals on any given hot day that you can drive around Victoria and see them suffering. I can't believe somebody who has sheep, how much they suffer on the most mild of days, how we can have them sitting out there in the extreme heat and they actually survive. So, and it's across the board. This was taken just outside of Bendigo, just in my last investigation area. They were everywhere. So you actually see, I chose this one because that's the radiating heat off the ground. In the background there, the image is blurry.
So do they have access to water, or do they normally get enough?
I couldn't see any water on site, but I'm sure.
Do they normally get access enough from the grass they eat, or just?
No, they don't.
Nothing like that.
They should have been hand fed in this region, particularly around Bendigo. It's desolate. So. Widespread suffering due to poor parasite protections, and basically no protections against worms, which is one of the most common things we document and common deaths we see is worms taking over and eating an animal from the inside out. And it usually starts with scouring, which is runny poo building up on the back. And that's one of the key things I wish people would see when they're just driving through regional Victoria and noting these kind of things that people might just dismiss as, it's just a pooey bum, but it's actually not. It's the start of something very bad, and it's a direct indicator of how poor that farmer is treating his animals, how much they're not looking after them. So it starts with nutrition, food, and most commonly not issuing parasite treatments, particularly in young. So just doing it periodically. They just can't be bothered rounding the sheep up half the time and giving them, administering it to them. They argue the point, scouring is something we argue with farmers online most about, and they usually say it's spring grass that causes it, but it's absolute rubbish. I've got sheep that live in the most greenest environment you could possibly have, and I've never had scouring ever in any of my sheep. It starts with worm burden, and eventually they will die from it. Rough handling and standard shearing practices. This is a PETA image, but some of the things that we've seen in the shearing space is horrific, and some sheep farmers have seen them just cut the ears off the farm. We've had sheep come into the rescue space, we can't figure out what's wrong with them, and they've had their penises cut off. It's endless, and there's nothing that regulates it. That's why we need cameras in shearing sheds, because there is so much behaviour and so much testosterone and evil practices that you just don't see. You're not going to see it unless you get cameras in there. One common thing we see, but it's not really talked about, is wool blindness, where a merino sheep that grows a little bit more excessive wool on their head and it grows over their eyes, so they spend their 6 to 12 months grazing in a paddock before they have a shear, and they can't even see. So they can't see predators, they can't see anything. Some of them can't see their lambing foot. So it's something that isn't mentioned very much, but we see it quite often. Castration is an obvious one. We don't need to get into that. And like tail docking, it can just happen chopped off at the same time or surgically, so there's not much governing in that space either.
This is just torture.
It is. We wait for the next one. I threw this one in as a bit of a. I discovered it while I was researching my talk. It's called the bit and spit technique. Now, I didn't believe it was true, and I had to research to find out that it actually was true. In the as an example of where this industry has evolved from. In regional areas where there's no equipment to do castrations, they used to cut the wool bag open, and they used to use their teeth and wipe them out. So,
Oh,
particularly in America. So I have no validation that was done in Australia. This was American practice in the early 1800s. So I've never stopped being surprised at the evil that's in this industry. So I call them historical barbarians because that's exactly what they are, and they've not proved any differently to this day. So, victims of predation ripped apart by dogs, foxes, even dingoes. It's the most common thing is they actually don't do anything. When a sheep goes down, they leave them, and they know that the foxes will come in and clean up the mess. It's one of the key things that I like to target in the welfare space is their not worth a bullet attitude actually is throughout the entire industry. They will not go and help those sheep when they're down. They'll deliberately leave them there. I've seen farmers that know they're there, and as soon as the sheep dies, they come out and drag them away so they don't have to deal with the medical side, or even some of them are that weak they won't even kill them or euthanize them. They'll rather let them sit there and disconnect from the reality. And it's all legal practice. It's suggested that they should go and check them, and that's the problem. Our code of practice suggests that they should be checked. So the fallback is, I didn't notice that they were out there, and that's legally okay. So, and it's one of the things we see the most of is they just don't help them, even when they're sitting at their front gate, when they drive past them. Cramped, stressful transport, and lately, last week there was a huge sheep truck crash in Bendigo. We're seeing more and more sheep truck crashes all the time. No other species is getting so many road incidents than sheep. And I think it's directly related to the attitude toward them and the mass level of exploitation that they're going through now. Last week was the Bendigo sale yards. If you knew that sale yard, you'd see how many sheep and trucks are coming in and out all the time. Heat wave days cramped in like that too. So you can imagine a sheep truck crash with a triple decker.
excuse me, what's actually preventing them jumping off? That looks so unsecure.
It does, doesn't it? Some of them stand up so high that my heart sinks that I think they are going to jump out. So, because they can launch off. Some sheep do jump. Sheep aren't particularly jumpers as instinctually. Sheep usually, I think sheep go under and goats go over. It's usually the way we think about it, but some do jump. They're all individuals. So,
what would be the market value of one of those sheep? So maybe they don't bother because they're so cheap.
We're gonna get to that, but they're yes, you'll see why they're so keen to exploit them. Fly strike, I just get that as a basic one, but that's the most common thing we document. And cruelty and lodging complaints to the department is just sheep suffering from fly strike that need immediate attention. It's a bit blurry, but this is just sheep dipping. This is sheep dipping. So this is to prevent lice and parasites on them. You can see what he's doing. There's so many things they endure. So this evil bastard's pushing them. And one of the sheep's struggling here, bangs their head on the side. The usual practice, which is going on forever and a day, is they just walk through it like a race, and they just quickly dip their head under the water for 1 second and they walk out. This one's a mobile one that's going around the heartland in New South Wales, sheep territory, so it is more widespread. There's an environmental layer of this too, because they dump all their chemical solution in the farmland and they're done and they move on to the next space. I just think it's a bit torture, the things they have to go through. I didn't put the video of this machine working because it is very upsetting. But this is submersion dipping, which is a portable machine that's going around in Australia that actually forces the sheep completely underwater, and it holds them under the water for 12 seconds with time the machine for. And it's all perfectly legal. None of this is mentioned. So, after my last talk, I actually put the video there and it made everybody very upset, so I was very careful not to do it this time. Most of you probably haven't seen these. They're handling extreme shearing machines, which is these machines have been going around for 20 years. We believe sheep are very, very injured in these processes because we believe how can they not be injured? Some of the compression that's going on, the flipping. That first video, if you watch the sheep when they've been shorn and they get flipped back around, they hit a metal bar as they get coming around. But the applied force of being lifted through the air plus the clamping, we believe there's no way they can't be not injured. So there's another video I have too about there's homemade devices which are even more evil and crude. So, and they're all perfectly legal. We call these rope racks, which is not a very description, but artificial insemination racks, which are artificial insemination isn't that popular, but it's becoming more popular because sheep are becoming more and more, the exploitation is becoming more concentrated. So I just think this is such a violation of the animal in every way. It just is so vulnerable. It's just such a horrible thing. And he flips it around so callously, and I just think the accidents and the things that could happen with them. Imagine if the rack fell over while they were in the room. Just the terror. Yeah.
What percentage of sheep are artificially inseminated?
It's hard to know because you don't have any facts, but it's the farmers that are refining the practice that want that pure breeding that are doing it. So and now because sheep are becoming so exploited, there's people that are intensively breeding them and having them indoors. They're really refining their genetics and they're very proud of it. And they're the people that are doing artificial insemination. So generally the people that we don't document because they're so mechanised in what they do. So certainly those average farmers that let their sheep get ripped apart in paddocks are artificial inseminated. So,
it's a problem collecting the semen in itself, isn't it?
yeah, that's. I'm not even going to explain to you how that happens. Yeah, because it's more disturbing.
Is it similar to the dairy industry?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah, just there's facilities. Most people don't realise there are actually specific facilities that are for semen collection. So. Millions left to die in paddocks with no assistance, including lambs. This was one just outside of Ballarat. These are all breeding rams that were just left. They all died from parasite treatment from not being issued worms. So he was reported. There was thousands of acres full of dead sheep. So he would have got away with all of it. This was just on roadside too. So yeah, just there, just ready to fill. So you don't need to go far. Nearly everything I've covered here is not covered adequately in our welfare frameworks or not covered at all. For example, those submersion machines aren't even mentioned in any code of practice or regulation. So, unregulated practices, we call them. Sheep virtually have nothing protecting them. Scroll to my happy slide a bit early. Now, I want to be clear, I'm an abolitionist at heart. I want it all gone. I go to bed cursing the world for not being vegan, and some days I do cry about it, obviously, because it's easy to cry about what happens for sheep. But I need to do something to channel my energy, something that feels like progress, something that sometimes it feels like we're locked out of the system, and we kind of are. So I'm pursuing a side door entry, kind of slipping in under their noses. I want a seat at the table, and I want to be a voice for sheep. So I'm directly challenging welfare. I decided to weaponise welfare and use it against them. So with 5 million pigs in Australia, 35 million cows, sheep needed help of 70 million of them, and they're aiming for more. I think the largest number we had, I think, was the early 80s. We had 135 million sheep in Australia. But what really got me motivated for sheep was this little girl, when I found her on the way home from work as a little lamb in a storm, and I knew absolutely nothing about sheep. She looked like she was impaled on a stick blowing in the wind with not another animal around. So I spent 7.5 loving years with her before she left this world, and she left a profound mark on my life. So I'm trying not to cry when I talk about her. So what do we do? What's our work? So we expose a multitude of cruelty situations, but the core work is reporting them to the regulator. So in Victoria, that's Agriculture Victoria, and in New South Wales, that's the RSPCA. We gather legal footage, draft formal complaints according to the current welfare framework and code of practice, and we're getting pretty good at it. We identified a regulatory framework that wasn't administering welfare at all. Each case we make public, add a case number, provide as much detail as possible without being visited by police or being sued. So we walk it online. As we all know, public exposure and pressure works, and it's perhaps our most effective tool. We've gathered some clout and we demand action of the department. They watch us, they follow us on social media, which is bizarre, but they do. I engage directly with Agriculture Victoria staff, and I'm certainly on the radar of the Agriculture Director and the Minister. Sure, they hate me. Our sole purpose was to reduce suffering and stop animal abuse, as we do an okay job. We've prevented a significant amount of suffering in 4.5 years we've been operating. And it ended some really cruel behaviours and stopped some really nasty farmers from continuing this cycle of cruelty. So the department does act occasionally for us. But more importantly, we want to show people that sheep are abused at every step of the way. There's nothing that protects them. Our welfare systems fail them every process. Sheep farmers have had a free pass and have never been called out, ever. Probably live export's the only time when they weren't really called out. For that, it was time to phase it out. Most don't realise live export was concentrated to maybe northern WA farmers, so it didn't impact the rest of the country. Certainly didn't impact New South Wales and Victoria, where the sheep heartland is. Because I've had a free pass, I've decided to remain focused on them, trying to undo the blind support that the vast population gives them. I think there are many realities that make a person step away from animal consumption, and I'm passionate about giving the consumer a good dose of cruel capitalism to prompt change. Many like to cling to the fanciful concept that animals live a rosy life up until slaughter, and many believe that farmers love their animals. The notions have been deeply seated and they're really bloody hard to undo. Especially when lobby groups know what we're up to as a movement and they work really hard to try and counter our work. Without a doubt, they are running scared. The tactics have gotten dirtier. They quite often use women and children to do a lot of their marketing now. I think last week I filmed a young disabled boy in a shearing shed feeding lambs. It was supposed to, that's, everyone has their disabled children bottle feeding their lambs, don't they? It's the propaganda that spreads through industry channels is sickening, and I could talk about it all day, the lies and the games that they play. The wool industry is currently merging with the flesh industry to gather more power, basically bigger, more manipulative campaigns that overlap the two industries. The wool industry is losing its international reputation and recently lost its high ranking with China. South Africa has taken over the leading wool supply chain to China at the moment. That's largely due to North America putting saying no to mulesing and forcing China to supply wool that's non-mules, and South Africa don't mule their sheep. But arrogant Australia has just decided to not budge on mulesing, even after having an economic blow and losing their top-ranking supplying status with China. They still aren't budging on mulesing.
So the South African sheep, are they merinos as well, or no?
I don't really know much detail about them, but I just know that the wool industry has shifted to them.
necessity.
Yeah. China pretty much buys from China manufacturing, it's the making that wool. And I think it's a good example of how international pressure can change what's going on in Australia to just Europe. Europe's starting to step up and say no to many sheep practices. I wish if I could show the world how Australia treats lambs, I think the industry would almost collapse. It's just getting them seen as. In saying that about the wool industry, the killing industry has grown exponentially. In 2024, Victoria alone killed 26.6 million lambs, and nearly all of them were destined for packaged meat market. So it's a staggering amount of lambs when you consider our national flock 70 million, and Victoria alone killed 26.6 million baby lambs. They still grow our victim. Poor me, their victim marketing is endless. But the reality is they've never killed so many sheep in Australia, and they've never profited so much. In fact, the highest profits on record are now. So while they're still always screaming poor and hard done by, they've never profited so much and killed so much. Recently, the sheep prices lamb prices hit $550 each, a far cry from the $80 to $120 they used to rest at for years and years. So it's a monster that needs stopping, and sadly, going vegan just isn't enough. We need to do more. The system needs breaks and hurdles, or else it's going to keep growing and supplying international markets. And that's our point of contact to meaning welfare. We'll hurt them.
Sorry, did you why have the prices reduced?
Sorry?
Why have the prices reduced?
No, they've gone high.
They've gone higher.
Yeah, they do fluctuate. They're bouncing now between about 250 to 550, depending on the animal. And,
Oh.
yeah.
Is this for export or just domestic or what?
This is just sale yard prices.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so it's not sourced.
What has caused it to go up though, and why are so many sheep being killed? Because I wouldn't have thought the local consumption was increasing that much.
It's export market.
Oh.
So that's what we're doing. That's why live export was irrelevant, because the packaged meat market is
Oh.
booming. We supply the Middle East and Asia and China with lamb. Australians are the biggest consumer of lamb in the world. I think is it 5 or 7 kilos on average Australians eat of lamb, and the world average is only about 1.2. So, yeah. But the population is less here, so the export market, the Middle East is the biggest market.
Is the drought not impacting on profit margins?
It is. That's why I grabbed figures from 2024, because last year's figures have all dropped because of the drought. Everyone offloaded their sheep and sold them, and they're a bit slow on delivering the figures. But they've announced that they plan to increase those numbers exponentially in the coming years. So, but the industry is navigating drought at the moment and how to get around no pasture. So, right. We work on other processes to ensure the sheep stay in the conversation. It's an important point, making sure they are never forgotten and always talked about. We regularly send emails to politicians highlighting department failures and the system flaws. Last year, we requested a parliamentary inquiry into the Victorian sheep industry and the regulators' ability to regulate welfare. With no expectation that inquiry is going to get over the line, it's about putting the language into the space and teaching everybody that there is one needed. We write to journalists highlighting their failures and reporting, and the data that they report is often a single farmer's point of view. It's usually a lie and it's a void of facts, so we like to let them know that we're watching them, and it's poor journalism to be just speaking opinion rather than giving truth. We form reports on various situations, and last year we formed a report, the Big Desert Predator Fence Report, and Big Desert National Park is a desert wilderness in central Victoria. I slept in a car for 2 nights and documented every farmer on the south side of the national park, countering the claims that farmers were victims of dingo attacks, which is relentless in the media at the time. So, the reality was those sheep farmers did nothing for their sheep. There was terrible fences, there was wildlife shot and left in the paddocks to draw out predators, cows, dead sheep everywhere. There was kangaroos just littered on the fence line vastly throughout the paddocks. Nobody lived on site, which is the number one thing that's just so bad. The holes in the media claims were huge, and the report discredited every single one of them. I sent the report to media, the department, the Ag Minister, and the Premier. So, strangely, the propaganda about Big Desert did smother a little bit after I did that. So, particularly, I called out the Weekly Times on publishing sheep dingo propaganda, and that's the space where I've noticed that they've stopped spruiking dingo rubbish so much when it comes to sheep. Won't last for long. It's only one journo. As soon as they're gone, the next one will start doing it again. All media needs to be called out though. By the end of next year, I hope to draft our own national standards, which is a really bloody weird thing for an animal activist to do. Well, it won't be a book of ideals, but I want science-based public expectations, and I want our version of national standards to sit alongside the current ones as a comparison to show how appalling the current ones are, and to show that there's a multitude of practices that aren't listed in our national standards whatsoever, particularly sheep dipping and their shearing machines and all sorts of things, and refine practices because it's a lack of clarity in our welfare framework that's the problem in the codes. The key thing we do is we stay in their space and we study the practices and behaviours, which is hugely empowering to know your enemy, to fully understand the complexities of the industry, but nothing else worries them more than somebody who knows their topic and is ready to challenge them on any position. How we managed to do that? Firstly, we set ourselves up to look like an industry group. Advocate can be interpreted differently. I chose that logo to be, oh geez, what are they? The activist or industry? So we didn't get shoved into the activist group straight away. So we only follow industry groups on social media, and that's a really painful thing to do. Our feed is full of constant industry chat. So you'd have to speak. We take a wide berth from animal activist orgs and rescue pages, which is really hard to do because we obviously want to support our allies, but it's strategic. It's how we stay in the public realm, and the more I block good orgs and those glossy, nice images and start commenting on industry stuff, the more farmers and average people start seeing our work. The last thing I want is to be trapped in a vegan bubble, speaking with converted. After 4.5 years of running Sheep Advocate, we're fully connected to the broader audience. The data feedback represents that. We sit as a collision space at the moment where caring people are meeting farmers and where vegans are meeting carnivores. It's to mediate that's quite difficult. It's been surprising. I had planned to achieve this to be that common, that middle ground, but I hadn't realised to be so successful. How many people have a story about sheep, the average person, and support some change for them? And the amount of encounters that people share online, and even farmers saying, yeah, that farmer's shit, they need to do better. It's really surprising. And how many people just care about sheep. As meat eaters expressing that they deserve more, sheep farmers agreeing that they need, other sheep farmers need to kick up the bum. And I believe that's where change starts. We all started somewhere right. At one point, the situation shocked us into full opposition to animal exploitation. I give humans credit, but there are many factors that make change, and small becomes bigger. I want to end my talk with some things that I've enjoyed to get here. I'm no expert, I just know sheep and know my topic really well. I need to work in a way that was safer and more mature. I'm 54, I've been in the animal rights space for about 12 years. In a way that was a lot more productive because animal rights can get absolutely insane crazy if you let it. It's obviously a highly erect, emotional space. I've been assaulted by and punched to the ground by a sheep truck driver who was determined to get my camera when I was documenting the sheep truck rollover whilst the police watched and did nothing. I've been targeted in a in a gun at night, in a paddock at night time with a gun under spotlight, and a colleague and I had to hide in a ditch with a newborn lamb in our arms, and we really feared that it was our last day that night. So, I've been followed down the main street of town and punched in my car window and tried to be dragged out of my car, trying to steal my car keys. I've been added to specific hate groups online that mocked and ridiculed me and my family. My personal details, business name and phone number have been shared on as many local groups in my regional town as possible, thanks to a viral journo that decided to run a story about me being a stock thief, which is just based on rescuing one single lamb. So being a stock thief is a federal offence, by the way, and I'm on record online for doing that. I've feared for my animals, sanctuary animals, each and every day. I've gone to work and come home. So, well, first off, I think everybody feels this, but it's just endless. It's been the hardest thing to deal with. It's just the online attacks and the private messages that come full on, particularly me, a male of 54 years old. Some people really sink quite low to try and ruffle me because they know I'm a white guy in his 50s, so I've lived a bit, so it takes a bit to stir me up. So one of the most common accusations that I get is I'm a pedophile, and it comes thick and fast sometimes. And I sit up at night time, delete, and nobody defends it. It just sits there, and I would like to sit there at night time and have to defend that by yourself. That's the most common.
I think the President of the United States is more guilty than you.
That's
right, Chad.
I know. Would you believe the females are the ones that deliver it the most to not men? So, yeah, it's one of the most harshest accusations. I notice lots of men in our space get that accusation because it's the most ferocious one, it's the most vicious one that sticks. My warning is don't let advocacy get messy. Focus and target your efforts. Many of you might be surprised I was a butcher many years ago, so everyone can change. Finally, don't rush, don't pressure yourself to do more, and take breaks to heal, because I certainly do. I have Christmas breaks, I have a special place in the bush I go to block it all out. Just remain dedicated, and the number one thing for sheep is just to never go away. Thank you. We've got 5 more minutes if you've got any more questions. Katrina?
Gary, hi. Well done on your great work. I'm following the page. I have a question about, you mentioned something about guidelines or writing your own set of...
Yeah, so the national standards. So
what do you hope to do with that once you've written it?
I will be showing every single politician in Parliament, state and federally. So,
are you hoping that they will then start to consider adopting some of your recommendations into that actual...
It's more about just showing everybody how the current one so fails so much. And when we get a chance to amend the national standards, which are getting dragged out now, if it'll ever happen, we kind of want to have that example of, well, this is what we should be getting to. Here you go, here's a good version. So it's not going to be an over-the-top version of standards. It's what I think is reasonable and what the industry could swallow as well. So
it's not the first time I've heard of that animal activists actually writing what needs to be written by the government or,
And I think it's a tactical move to scare them to this shit. An activist is like getting involved, and well, they've already told everybody what the standards should be before we've had a chance to debate them in the committee. It's just being one step ahead of their game. So.
Well, you must be doing something right because you're pissing off people. So.
We are. Our page is getting hundreds of thousands of views, and we only have 5,500 followers. So one of our posts here 1.2 million views. It's just.
Is that the tail post? Sheep keeping their tails?
Yeah, that one's up about 350,000. That submerged dipping machine hit 1.2 million views, but I just can't believe how much it circulates. And I think it's about playing that middle ground, keeping sheep. The word sheep in social media tends to be moved around. Some of the first people to see our posts are sheep industry people, farmers. So,
If we were driving along a rural road and we saw a sheep suffering, how can we assist your cause?
We'll always recommend make sure you report them formally, of course. So we're the second point. And these days, I help people report. So if you're unsure about what to report or how to report it, you can email us and we'll steer you in the right direction. And obviously, depends on the situation. If an animal's immediately suffering now, I encourage you to contact the local council or Agriculture Victoria first, because they do take animals suffering immediately now is very seriously. They won't act on dead animals, so there's nothing you can do about that. If there's an animal alive and suffering now in Victoria, they act. I've had mixed opinions about how RSPCA act in New South Wales. So,
I just wanted to wait for leveraging the overseas big players to let them know what's going on, because feeding this sort of stuff that's got shock value to lower the chances of importing the sheep. Is it worthwhile doing that rather than in-house? It seems a bit of a closed shop of mafia here, but outside it's very open thing and really getting it.
I think
Social media and everything.
I think the industry fears exposure internationally.
Yeah.
So one of my works, I know Collective Fashion Justice are doing it too. I want to get involved in exposing this stuff directly to the fashion people and the people that are actually buying the wool from China and really showing them the truth.
Yeah. I know Mulesin's had a good chop. What's the next step down to get maybe the meat industry involved?
Oh look, there's so many things. People are surprised. Tail docking, for example. We dock tails off every single sheep in this country, and half those sheep breeds don't even have fly strike or get pooey bums that self-shed that don't need it. We automatically do it. Farmers have bred sheep in Australia to have short pencil tails that lift fully that do not need docking. The industry has already solved the problem. We won't do it. There's simple things like that could be internationally shamed, because England support no tail docking as well in certain breeds. So there's a lot of things we can do. But with that breeding, cycle mass breeding.
But picking one that's really no shock value and then pushing that forwards.
Yeah, I think mulesing's up and running now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about the meat side.
Yeah, it's hard to know which one to pick. I tell you. And I think mulesing was a big effort from all the leading organisations to get to this point. It's been years. So what's next? And look at live export. How much it took to get over the line. So,
Just from another. Okay. Mine's just from another perspective of trying to understand this. When you talked about land use and, of course, the issues that are now faced with farmers and areas for grazing and use of the land, and you talked about, of course, the exposure relating to sheep without trees or other vegetation, and all of the sort of the weather changes. So all of those things that are happening to change the use of the land and the way the land is operating. Does that mean that is there room, or have you moved in with sort of looking from environmental perspectives on?
We use that as part of the language now too. I think that's the subtle one. The conversations, because our motto is expose, regulate and phase out the industry, and people messages, farmers go, what do you mean about phase out the industry? And I'm like, you're naturally going to phase out whether you like it or not, because the environment's going to phase out eventually. So it's
because I mean obviously that's got to have an impact on the sort of revenue, the sort of the whole workings business-wise of a farmer's role to play in how he's going to look at the sheep are his commodity.
That's
if
right.
The sheep are going to be there in a parched piece of land, and the land is not being cared for, and it's a slippery slide to the.
It is. And imagine if we could ramp welfare up where shade and shelter was starting to be a requirement to those people, and there was restrictions on breeding with the environmental impacts side by side.
Is that sort of like a whole other way that has a whole lot of future to to try and
It
use
is.
to
Let's hope.
put
Let's
pressure
hope.
on the industry?
Let's hope when the organisations are sustaining, I've got a team of people behind me will be
Yeah.
going everybody angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fran, sorry. Jen.
Yeah, I'd like to know, sitting in the room here, all of us, what can we do, our next step to help you with what you're achieving? So,
I really want people just to, even if they're country driving, anybody who goes through a regional drive in Victoria, just have a look a little bit closer at sheep and take a photo and even just ask and see if everything's all right, whether this is normal.
I suppose it's helpful to share your Facebook posts. So
It
more
is,
people
it
can
is,
know where.
yeah. We play that middle ground and try and educate people on practices and the failing welfare system. So as you see, we challenge farmers. So we mostly get farmers on there, and a lot of the chatter is farm, you don't do this, or you should do this or do that. And that's why it's important to know what I'm talking